Today I'm going to be sharing 6 essential documentary filmmaking tips that I wish I'd known when I first started out making films over 15 years ago.
Directing is just really fun because you get to be really creative and you're in control and
If I'd known even just a couple of these tips that I'm going to share with you today, it would have saved me so much time and frustration. So to save you from making the same painful mistakes that I did, here are 6 essential tips all documentary filmmakers should know. First up, tip number 1 is find a compelling character. If you make a film about someone who doesn't have an engaging story, you'll get to editing your documentary and you'll be pulling your hair out, trying to make it all work. So how do you know if you've found the right character for your film? Well, all good stories have a character that wants something. For example, in my freediving short film, One Breath, the main character, Christina, wants to attempt a world record dive with her husband, Eusebia. This want then sets Christina off on her journey as she attempts to achieve this goal. If Christina didn't have a want and she was just freediving, would have a topic but no story. Next is external and internal obstacles. So when a character is working towards achieving their goal, you want to make sure you've chosen a character that has to overcome some tough obstacles to achieve their goal. Otherwise, if it comes easily to them, it's boring for an audience to watch. The harder it is for the main character to achieve their goal, the more the audience will be invested in your documentary. Then we have stakes. A stake is what's at risk if the character fails to achieve their goal. In One Breath, the stakes are really high because failure means life or death. The higher the stakes, the more compelling the story. Next, we're on to tip number 2, which is to create a documentary treatment. It's very tempting to want to start shooting your documentary straight away because it's fun and exciting, without creating a treatment. However, if you don't have a focus or direction, you may have to reshoot big chunks of your documentary because the material that you've captured doesn't fit the story or it's not very engaging. Creating a documentary treatment helps give your documentary focus. So what are some things you should include in a documentary treatment? Well, first up, I would recommend starting with a title and logline. Ideally, keep your title to no more than 3 words. Then I'd recommend having a synopsis. This is where you introduce your main character and summarize the story. Then I'd usually have the filmmaking approach. This is where you talk about your personal filmmaking style and your vision for the project. Then you can introduce yourself and the team. This is where you show why you and your team are the best people to make this film. Then have a budget. This is where you state how much the film's going to cost for potential investors, and this helps them to see whether or not they can afford to invest in the film and whether they think it's worthwhile. And then we have distribution. This is where you set out your aims for your film and where you talk about where you'd like it to be shown. For example, you may want it to be in the cinema, or you may want it to be on a streaming platform like Netflix, or you may want to put it online for free on a website like YouTube or Vimeo. And often I found when I share a treatment with a potential investor, they're more likely to take your project seriously. Then we have tip number 3, which is assemble a team to help you make your documentary. When I first started out making films, this was something I really struggled with, as no one else in my community were making films, and all the professionals that I found online were too busy to help. So I just felt stuck. And then I tried making films by myself, and this was great for learning the basics of filmmaking. But I quickly realized that in order to move forwards in my filmmaking journey, I needed to collaborate with other filmmakers. So how do you find a crew when getting ready to shoot a documentary? You can do this by connecting with fellow filmmakers online. A good way to do this is by reaching out on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, whatever social media platform that you like to use the most, and find other filmmakers who are doing similar work to you, or filmmakers in your local area. And remember that the key to building a strong working relationship is to show an interest and to add value first before asking for value. And then next, you could potentially attend film festivals. This could be in your local area, or it could be further afield. When you attend these events, introduce yourself to other filmmakers and offer to take them out for coffee, or maybe to help them out on their next film. Another great way to find potential crew members is to contact local film schools. You could get in touch via their website, or you could contact their reception and ask some of the teachers if they have any pupils that they could recommend that are looking for work experience. Then you could also ask your friends and family. This is something I did a lot, and I'd often bribe them with food and chocolate, whatever it took to get them involved in my projects. And I would just show them exactly what I needed, whether that was holding a boom or holding a camera, and I'd talk them through it. I'd also try and make it as fun as possible for them when they were shooting. Otherwise, if I made it really boring, they would never get involved or want to help out again. Next, we have tip number 4, which is when filming, create sequences, not shots. When I first started out making documentaries, I would just try and create beautiful shots that look cinematic and epic, and I wouldn't think about the edit and how the scene would come together. But then when I did get to the edit, I realized that it's much better to get a couple of incredible sequences rather than lots of random shots that don't make very good scenes. So when you're filming a sequence, I'd recommend just using one camera and following what's called the 5-shot rule. So the 5-shot rule, as the name suggests, is where you film a sequence using 5 different camera angles. So I'm going to run through these 5 shots now to show you how to take a scene like this and turn it into a scene like this. So first up, you'll want to film a close-up of your subject's hand to show what's being done. Then film a close-up shot of your subject's face. Then a wide shot showing where the scene is taking place. Then an over-the-shoulder shot of your subject. And lastly, an unusual shot to show the scene unfolding. It's up to you what sort of camera angle you use. Just be creative with it, whether that means climbing up a tree to get a high angle, crawling on your belly to get a low angle, or tilting your camera to get a Dutch angle. Using the 5-shot rule will help you decide what camera angles to use when filming a scene. It's especially useful if you have limited time to film. Once you've mastered the 5-shot rule, you can add, subtract, and mix up the angles you use when filming a scene, and start to develop your own visual style. Then we have tip number 5. And this is one of the most important tips, but it's often forgotten about, and that's capturing great sounding audio. When watching a film, people will generally forgive bad visuals for a few minutes. But with bad sound, people will stop watching within seconds. Remember that what people hear is 50% of their viewing experience. So how can you make sure you have great sounding audio when filming your documentary? Well, first up, you want to plan ahead. This means visiting the location in advance and plan how to minimize noise pollution and decide which is the best time of day to film. Next, you don't want to rely on the built-in camera microphone as your main source of audio, as it's a very low quality mic. Instead, use a shotgun mic or a lapel mic. Tip number 3 is placement of your microphone. The closer the mic is to your subject, the cleaner the sound. Try out different options and see how close you can get your microphone without it coming into shot. Next, you want to check your audio recording level, especially for dialogue. Make sure your sound is always below 0 decibels. Otherwise it will distort. The sweet spot is around -10 dB. And lastly, record a wild track. You can do this by spending a couple of minutes after you've filmed a scene just capturing the local ambience of the location to help smooth out cuts when editing. And finally, we're on to tip number 6, which is to use an editing workflow. When you get to editing a documentary, it can feel very overwhelming, as it's hard to know where to begin when you have so much unorganized footage, photos, and audio files. This daunting feeling can be paralyzing, and when I first started out, it stopped me from finishing a film on more than one occasion. It's taken me a lot of trial and error to learn these strategies and techniques, and I'm going to run through some of them with you now. The first thing I do to get ready when editing my documentary is to ingest all the footage straight after the shoot. I use a piece of software called Hedge, and the reason I love this is because it allows you to do multiple backup copies of the media at the same time. I then watch all the footage that I filmed, and then I make notes of the best moments, noting down the time codes so I can easily find that footage again. After that, I import all the elements of the film into my editing software. I use Adobe Premiere Pro. However, there's lots of other great options out there, like Final Cut and Avid Media Composer. I then start laying my favorite shots onto the timeline and watch through them to start to get a feel of what works and what doesn't. When choosing your favorite shots, look for key emotional moments that make you feel something, whether that's happiness, sadness, or fear. These scenes will then become the building blocks of your documentary. Then it's time to start building the framework of your documentary using the 3-act structure by narrowing your story down into a beginning, middle, and end. Once you feel you're in a good place with your story, it's time to refine and re-edit. Keep chopping and changing and adding footage. Leave no stone unturned. Try every piece of footage, see what works and what doesn't, and feel free to mix and match the framework of your story. It's also a good idea to show the film to a test audience who have nothing to do with the project and are happy to give honest feedback. So those are my 6 essential tips for documentary filmmaking. If you want more value-packed tips, like in this video, I've put together a free documentary training where I share how I make cinematic documentaries. To get this free training, all you need to do is click the link in the description, sign up, and you'll get instant access. If you have any questions, post them in the comment section, and I'll see you in the next video.